And when we lead with a question, it gives us the full picture. And then we know how to move forward in wisdom with what we say next.
Hello and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebekah Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, encouragers. On this week's podcast, I have our guest, Donna Jones, talking to us about healthy conflict, peaceful life. And believe me, you guys, if we just took out the adjectives, we could just have healthy life. But we all know that in the middle of there is some conflict that we have to go through. And she's just a great, friendly guest that will walk us through how to do this in a healthy way and to turn it over to God and get through to the details about, like, sometimes you just need the tools in order to resolve conflict or just walk yourself through it. Donna Jones is a national speaker, church planter, pastor's wife, and self-described Bible explainer who has spoken in 26 states and on 4 continents. She hosts the weekly That's Just What I Needed podcast, best title ever, by the way, and is the author of Seek, A Woman's Guide to Meeting God, Taming Your Family Zoo, I do have a zoo, and Get Healthy Bible Study Series. Welcome, Donna, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Rebekah. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. First of all, I'm not sure how you name your books and things, but awesome. Even the podcast name, that's just what I needed to hear. And of course, I've listened to a couple episodes and I was like, oh, that is the best. That is what I needed to hear. So kudos to you and getting words in the right places on the right platforms, because it makes sense.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to talk about conflict today. And I can't help but think, you guys, first of all, everything was against us to try and get on this podcast. But you know what? We are here and we're recording, and the kids are home in the summer. And I kid you not, there's conflict 3 minutes before you and I got on live here, where she says, "Did you hear what she said to me?" And she's like, "Mom, did you hear what?" And I was like, "Okay, guys, I'm going to interview someone about conflict. Can you just put your conflict aside for 25 minutes? Now, admittedly, it wasn't my conflict, but we got to deal with some things. We're packing for camp and we got some overtiredness going on and all the things. So this is good timing for all of us. So as we talk about it, Donna, keep in mind that we also are trying to figure out our children's conflicts as well, even if they're not with us. And we just need some tools to help them reason with another and come out healthy, like your book says. What motivated you to write a book about conflict?
Because your life is my life, and it's everybody's life, right? Everybody listening has the same life. I mean, if I could have written a book called No Conflict, Peaceful Life, that would have been great, but that's just not reality, especially when we are multitasking, which there's not a woman on the planet that doesn't multitask.
Correct.
We're moms, we're, like you said, a lot of your listeners are business owners, or they work inside the home, outside the home. We just have so much going on. And then we've got so many people that we're interacting with, whether it's our own families or it's people at the workplace, our neighbors, and so all of that means there's going to be conflict. So, and as you mentioned, I'm a pastor's wife. And so, I've had this upfront row to see how the same conflict, if it's handled in a really healthy way, people get through it and they thrive, and they, there's unity and there's actually even growth. But that same conflict, if it's not handled in a healthy way, other people, other friendships, other families, other churches, they just fall apart. So I just thought, we all want great relationships. That's just what we want. Because if relationships aren't right, life isn't right.
Correct.
I mean, it just, when our relationships go wrong, it consumes us. We're driving down the road and we're like replaying, what he said, what she said, what we said, what we wish we'd said. We're in the shower and we're replaying it. We're making the kids lunch and we're replaying, it's like it's all consuming.
It's robbing.
It is. And so I figured, if that's the thing that robs us the most, well, then why don't we just deal with it and figure out how to handle it so it stops driving us crazy and robbing our peace?
Yeah. And I think that's the main thing there is, on the other side of it, if you can get through it, I'm not great at it, so I'm hoping to learn a ton, is there is peace on the other side of it. And we are not called to abandon it and leave it. It's kind of like the cancel culture, if you will, in a little bit of it, where it's just like, let it go and then you don't need them in your life. And I'm like, but that's not realistic. Even
Right.
for I'm like, but that's not life. You're going to run into another conflict in another relationship. You just can't abandon it all the time. I mean, of course, within reason and boundaries. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm going to have to figure this out after this with my daughters because you're stuck with each other for the next how many years.
That's
So we
right.
got to figure out how to resolve this and hopefully do it in a healthy way. Okay. In the book, you reveal the single most important quality necessary for handling conflict. So I'm secretly hoping I get to say, yes, I have that quality. What is that? And why is it so important to obtain it if we don't have it?
Yeah. And honestly, this is so important that no conflict can be resolved without this. So if this is missing,
Okay.
you're just absolutely, you're not going to be able to resolve a conflict. And it might surprise you because when most people think, okay, what do I need to do in order to resolve a conflict? They think of an action.
Yeah.
But this quality is actually not an action, it's an attitude. And it's the attitude of humility. And the reason this is important is because humility says, okay, this is me and you, whereas pride says, this is me against you. And
Oh,
that right there, that totally flips the script. Because most of us handle conflict, it's like, well, me against you, my way against your way, my opinion against your opinion. But if it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is me and you against this problem. So, like,
it's
let's
like
just take
objectifying it.
yeah. And humility also, it allows us to listen, it allows us to hear the other person's perspective, it allows us to express our perspective in a reasonable way that can be heard. And so that's why it's this is the key is okay, I have to dial it down and what's my attitude here? Am I coming with an attitude of humility or am I just coming to this conflict with an attitude of control? And, a lot of times that happens too, especially from
Competition, wanting to win.
competition. Exactly. Just wanting to be heard. And none of those things wanting to be heard is important, but it's the attitude. It's the attitude behind it. So it's just huge.
And especially if you can get in that frame of mind while you're ruminating on it, like let's
Mhm.
say this is slightly before you're like, okay, we actually do have to solve this. This is someone going to be in my life. If you approach it with, okay, my attitude first, like you said, is going to be of humility, then what is the problem outside? And then I just picture like, I love visuals. It's like you link arms with this person. How are
Mhm.
we going to solve this together? Like, let's approach it as a team with humility. And then like the problem, like, let's talk it out.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you just said approach it as a team. Because that is really key. So when my husband JP and I were first married, we were having this conflict and it was escalating. So it was like, I thought I was right. He thought he was right. And, we were going back and forth, back and forth. And the more we went back and forth, the more it escalated and more heated it got. And then finally, my husband JP just looks at me and he just takes a pause and he goes, Donna, I'm on your team. And I'm telling you, Rebekah, just those words, it absolutely took this conflict that was escalating it and it would just de-escalated it. And it was like, well, if we're on the same team, then that's a
Yes.
whole different perspective. And I think sometimes even in parenting or in
Hmm.
marriage or in business, if we approach it like, hey, I'm on your team. So let's
Yep.
figure this out.
Yeah.
That completely flips the script for
Yeah.
conflict
It
management.
does. Especially like, at the risk of talking about a sports analogy is like when you're on the same team and somebody is hurting or they're arguing why their play should be the best, if you can approach it like, listen, if we want to win in the sports arena this game, then we're going to have to like link arms and figure it out. And you're going to have to humbly accept that we got to do this as a team.
Mhm.
It does flip the script a little bit in that regard as well. So if that early argument, which I'm sure there was some afterwards, set you up for success already, that is probably why. And then learning from the church, all the conflict that exists in church relationships, as we know, really did set you up to write a book on conflict. How have you found it in your kids' relationships, like with your kids when you approach things?
Yeah. Well, you've heard this. All of your listeners have heard this. Things are more caught than taught.
Okay.
So, a lot of
Yes.
times as parents, of course we teach our kids how to handle conflict, apologize to your brother or say you're sorry. Of course there's that aspect of teaching. But honestly, Rebekah, what our kids catch is like, how did we handle conflict? How did they see mom and dad argue?
Mm-hmm.
How did they see mom handle conflict or recover from conflict when she blew it? So, things like apologizing when you're wrong, like, oh God, I handled that so bad. I got super frustrated, and I was frustrated about this. And you know what? I took it out on you, and that's not okay. And I am sorry, things like that. Then we're modeling how to handle conflict. And I think one thing I think that's really been helpful for me, going back to this whole idea, and this is a practical tip, by the way, a practical tip for getting on the same team is to start from a place of agreement. Like, what will you both want? So let me give you an
Okay.
example. So let's just say you're having a conflict with your child over homework. I mean, I know we're recording this in the summer, but let's just say, that's like a battle that is
I can recall.
rages in your home, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm going nuts. And
Mm-hmm.
then what you find is that, you have the best of intentions. You try to set your child up for, we're going to do homework at this time. But then they battle you, and then you end up frustrated, and then you're screaming, and then the house is chaos, and then you feel guilty. And then, it's just a mess, right? So sometime apart from the midst of that conflict, you might have a conversation with your child that goes something like, hey, have you noticed that there is a lot of conflict, or just a lot of chaos in our home surrounding conflict? And the child's probably going to go, yeah. And then you're going to say something like, you know what? I bet you hate it as much as I do. Do you hate that I start yelling at you over conflict? I hate it that I do that. I bet you hate it too. Yes. Oh my gosh, I hate it. Okay. Since we both hate it, what do you think we can do to move forward? So that this is not a constant conflict. So see, before you say, what can we do? You've already put yourself on the same side. Do you hate it as much as I hate it? Because I hate it. Okay, so you can do that with marriage. Do you see how we're battling over finances all the time? Honey, I hate that this is such a source of contention. I bet you hate it too. Or with a coworker, or with you put yourself on the same side of the problem, and then the person functionally says, yeah, I see that the same way.
Yeah.
And then now you can move forward.
Well, it's that humility. It's that attitude of like, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be humble. What actually is going on here? And it's actually putting yourself on the same side as the teammate, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and going like, okay, well, we agree on this.
Yeah.
Now what can we do?
Yeah. Because you're not going to
Yeah.
agree on everything. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
So, but you can at least agree on, you want more peace, or you want more, whatever it is in your particular situation.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about being a mom, a wife, a pastor's wife, for
Mhm.
one, and seeing the conflict in the church. How did you start learning these practical things? Like, was this practice after practice after practice where you're like, we're going to figure this out? How did this become such a subject that you're like, I have to write about this because I've got some things at work?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Like, I went to school at UCLA, and I was
Okay.
a interpersonal communications major, and then I went to grad school at USC, also in
Okay.
communications. So I kind of
Yes.
had that as a professional background. And then just, being a mom and but honestly, Rebekah, what really, really turned the switch on for me is years ago, my husband and I were involved in a church hurt situation. And it blindsided us. We didn't see it coming. And it was so painful. And I realized something that all of us realize is that when we are in the midst of conflict, that it hurts, right? It's painful. And so anytime something hurts, it's really hard to handle in a holy and healthy way.
Okay.
And
Thank you for
I was no
saying that.
exception. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my first chapter is titled "The Day I Wanted to Burn the Church Down." The day I wanted to burn
Okay.
down the church.
Provocative. I like it.
So I
Hmm.
just want to be real, because
Yeah.
it doesn't help anybody if we're not real.
Oh,
So let's
correct.
just all be honest, and just acknowledge that when we're in the midst of conflict, it hurts, and hurt is hard to handle.
Yeah.
So one of the mistakes that I made looking back is that I would think things like, well, if that person would just
Yeah.
then, so functionally what I was doing, I didn't realize it then, but functionally what I was doing was saying, if that person would just change, then I could be at peace. I could be better. I could handle this in the right way.
Okay.
and I wouldn't hurt.
Mhm.
And honestly, Rebekah, there was some truth to that, right? If
Sure.
the person changed,
Yes.
it would have been better. But I also didn't have any control over that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so really God pinned my back up against the wall. And
Mm.
he really taught me something important. And that was like, I cannot hand the keys to my peace to another person.
Mm.
I am responsible for my peace. And I am responsible, first and foremost, for handling the things that happen in my life in a way that pleases God.
Yeah.
And if I do that, even if the other person never changes, even if I do not get the relational outcome that I desire, then I can have a measure of peace because I can stand before the Lord and say, okay, Lord, you know, you have seen my heart. You know, I tried to do what your word told me to do. And there is some freedom in
Yeah.
that because we can't always get the outcomes that we want, but we can always choose to do the right thing and then, honor God with how we deal with things. And so that was really the catalyst for me.
I think that's such a practical thing too. Like if we can think of it, listeners, when we hear ourselves, if they would just, because as you said, I was like, oh gosh, I say that so like, if you would just, like, it's so
Mhm.
simple. If you would just, then I
Exactly.
can have my peace, which obviously wasn't my next sentence, but it was like, well, if you would just do this, this would be miles better. So now when I
Exactly.
hear that word, if you would just, I'm going to think and go, okay, but I'm handing over something
Mhm.
that they also don't want. They can't handle trying to give me peace, just like they can't handle trying to get a hold of their own. But being really mindful of the only one that can give us peace is ultimately God. And
Mhm.
so, wow, if they would just, I'm like, ooh, that one's going to sting. I hope we all listen to that throughout the week as we're listening to this podcast and go, okay, I definitely use that phrase because it's just such a boom. Okay, I can't give it away like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't even realize we're doing that until we become aware that we're doing that. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, it was a game changer for me.
It's such a good thing here too when we can be made aware of it before we get into the situation, because the heat of the moment,
Mhm. Yeah.
it's very hard to take a step back. Very hard to take a step back. Okay, in the book you also talk about 10 common mistakes that will make our conflicts even worse. So now we're aware of what that we need to be on the same team. We need to
Yeah.
approach it with an attitude of humility. What are some common mistakes we make in the heat of the moment?
Yeah. I think the first one, the biggest one is, well, the two came to my mind right
Okay.
off the bat. The first one is being dismissive of other
Ooh.
people's.
Ooh.
So, and it's so funny how we do this and we're not even aware, but somebody else's concern or somebody else's hurt feelings or somebody else's, and we say things like, why are you making this such a big deal? Or you're such a drama queen. Or, oh
Okay.
my gosh, again?
Mm.
Or just get over it. Can't you get past this? All of those things, what you're basically doing is dismissing the other person's issue. And then what happens is that because when we're in conflict, when something's not right in a relationship, what people really want is they want to be understood. That's what I want. I want somebody just to hear me and understand me. I don't even necessarily need someone to fix me,
No.
right? Especially
No.
if it's my spouse.
Right.
I just want them to hear and understand, right?
Mhm.
And so when somebody dismisses you, and this is even if parents do this to their children, is that subconsciously what we do is we think in our minds, okay, she's not hearing me. So I need to ramp it up.
Yes.
And
Yes, that is
so
so true.
so it'll like people will get louder or they'll get more dramatic or they will give you more details. And then if you still don't hear it, if you're still dismissing it, they'll ramp it up even more. And then they'll ramp it up even more until they get to the point where in their mind, and this all happens like in a nanosecond. In their minds, they go, well, she's never going to get it. She just, and so then they'll shut down. So they either escalate or they end. So, and then you'll hear people say things like, okay, just forget it. You never understand. Or they'll slam doors or they'll walk out of the room or like, no, this conversation is over. See, all of those things are somebody ending the conversation because
They felt dismissed.
Yeah, they felt dismissed. So this is where humility comes in, because sometimes in our minds we're like, we do think like, oh my gosh, again, right?
Really?
I mean, let's just get practical.
Yes.
We do
Yes.
think that. But what
Yeah.
we have to understand is that when we dismiss things, we think we're going to minimize the conflict. But in reality, we actually maximize the conflict and make things accidentally worse rather than better.
Oh, jeez, you guys. Seriously, the argument with my daughters before this, I literally said the line, you guys, it's mac and cheese. And I dismissed everybody's feelings so that I could wrap it up nice and neat, move on. This is so...
Now, that's not to say,
Wow.
Rebekah, to make you feel better, especially in parenting.
Yes.
Sometimes kids go on and on and on,
Right.
and you
Yes.
do. Sometimes you have to
Yes.
go, okay, like I've heard, this has been heard and acknowledged. Enough, right? So there are times for that.
Yes, I think you're
But,
right. Like
yeah.
but at the same time, I'm like, okay, but she really did say something not very nice to the other one that we do need to address. And so, wow. Okay, can you give us a few more of the common mistakes before these escalate?
Yeah. So the second one that I think of is expectations. And this is really, I think, important with, women who are juggling a lot of balls.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everybody knows that, expectations are, they're the key to handling a lot of conflict. But here is, I'll tell you a little story and why this became just so pivotal. So again, JP and I, first year of marriage, and we got into this ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous, argument over ice cream. So
Okay.
we had this routine where we ate ice cream. We both worked insane hours our first year of marriage. And so we would come home, end of the day, we'd get our jammies on, we'd get ourselves a bowl of ice cream and watch whatever was on TV. So he goes into the kitchen, comes back into the family room with one bowl of vanilla ice cream. And I just went, where's my bowl? And he goes, what do you mean, your bowl of ice cream? And I said, well, babe, we eat ice cream together every night. So how would you not know? And he goes, well, how would I know you wanted ice cream unless you told me you wanted ice cream? Well, in my mind, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. This is like a no-brainer. So and I don't know if it was PMS or just exhaustion or, I don't know. I don't know what happened, but for whatever reason, this just made me so mad, Rebekah.
Yeah.
So I go stomping into the kitchen and I'm jerking open the freezer door and, I'm thinking, I can't believe it. And he says, I'm going to take out the garbage. So I'm spooning my ice cream into my bowl, mad as can be over this stupid situation. And it's summertime. So I see him pass the kitchen window, the window's open, to take out the trash. And then he comes back and he puts his face right up to the screen. And he gets this big smile on his face. And then he says these words, expectation without communication leads to frustration. And we both started laughing. And I said, did you just make that up? He goes, yep, just thought of it. So that became kind of the cornerstone of our marriage, our parenting, like expectation without communication will lead to frustration. So, for any of your listeners, this is something that I've learned the hard way, is that if there is an ongoing frustration, then think about that for a minute and then back up, retrace your steps, and then say, did I communicate an expectation that I had? Because generally there'll be an expectation that wasn't fulfilled,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So let me give you an example. So
Okay.
you mentioned at the outset that I'm a speaker. So I travel all over and speak to churches and conferences all over the country. So especially when my kids were a lot younger, sometimes I would come home after a weekend away and the house would be
Look like
kind
a
of
frat
disaster.
house?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And,
Yep.
and my husband's, I have the best husband in the world, but I would walk in exhausted and it would be so defeating for me.
I know. Oh my gosh.
I
This
would
is so
just be
relatable.
like,
Mhm.
I don't even know if it's worth it for me to do this. But so instead of like flipping out completely, I just said, okay, wait a minute. You know what? I didn't even realize that I had an expectation.
Yeah.
So I just asked my husband, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect, but could you just maybe, make sure the dishes are in the dishwasher? Or, I gave him a few little things. And so it was like, yeah, that's totally doable. So every time I went
Yes.
away, about an hour before I got home, he would look at the kids and say, okay, we've got an hour. Kids, we're straightening
Let's
up the
go.
house. And everybody went into, and I walked in from that point on, and it was the sweetest, sweetest homecoming. And it was a win for everybody. But it was because I realized, oh, I had this expectation I didn't even know I had. And then we
Yes.
just worked together as a team and made it workable for everybody. And it just took a
Yeah.
lot of the conflict off the table.
I talk about this so frequently. I think this is part of our family system. I talk about 5 systems, and ours is not, even if you've been gone. So I'm gone for weekends to the art shows with my purses and accessories, but then there'll be times when I've just been gone for the day and I come home and they have been there. And I always say, like, just clear these 2 areas. Like,
That's
just
good.
line up the shoes in the entryway, because for whatever reason, that's a trigger for me. And then the kitchen sink is dry. So meaning the dishes are done and put away. And there's 4 kiddos, so they can hammer it out in no time.
Yep.
But it's similar to you. I would just get so frustrated and then irritable, but I didn't want to be irritable because I just got home to everybody and I want to be warm and fuzzy, but I was prickly. So nobody wanted to be near me. And so just speaking that through, communicating
Mhm.
that frustration now just really helps out. And sometimes I find, and probably because they're my daughters and they just know things, they'll just quick, like, go ahead of me and straighten shoes. And I'm like, oh, you guys are the best. And it's just an easy communication of, like, we love each other. We want to do relationships well together. It's a simple thing. So it's like you said, you didn't expect, like, pristine house, but can we just not look like a disaster so my brain can relax as soon as my body has relaxed from being home?
Yeah. And you know what? Even going back to, like, teaching your kids how to deal with conflict, like,
Mm.
to your point, your kids learned, oh, that's mom's love language,
Yep.
to have the shoes straightened up. So then they grow up being aware of speaking other people. They're going to do that for their husband or their kids, or
Yes.
it's just the way their
Yes.
roommates. It's going to be the way
Yes.
they relate, which is really healthy and going to
Yeah.
set them up for success.
Yeah. We use the phrase in our house frequently. Are you being a good roommate? Because inevitably they'll be a roommate someday. So, like, if they are doing things that are messy and they're like, ah, it's my sibling, I don't care. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You won't get away with that for very long. Like, you'll have a husband, you'll probably have a college roommate. Like, are you being a good roommate? Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's great.
Oh, that I'm learning so much. And I like that also the replay of, like, if you find yourself feeling the frustration, zoom out. I use this phrase frequently, like, zoom out. And you said, walk the steps back. Like, wait, where was an expectation that you knew yourself, but you hadn't communicated? And then find a humble way of saying, I didn't realize I had this expectation, but it is. And sometimes I think, and maybe you have found this, Donna, like, when you speak what the expectation is, you might feel a little silly talking about it out loud. So you
Mm.
can take off 20% of it and be like, okay, that might be a little too high or a little too low. But just being able to explain it helps you process it with your teammate.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I love that. I love that. Can I tell you one more
Yes,
just little
please.
tip that might be helpful, is that when you're gonna have to have a hard conversation with someone, your spouse, your child, your coworker, whomever, a lot of people start with this phrase. They say, "We need to talk." Right?
Ooh,
Okay,
yeah.
that is the worst opening
It's
line
terrible. It's a tough one.
in the history of the world, right? Because I mean, we all know when somebody says that to us, I mean, where does your brain go, Rebecca?
Something's wrong.
Yeah,
I
something's wrong.
screwed up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we already think something's wrong and we screwed up, then that puts us on the
Defense.
defensive before the conversation has even started. So from now on, if you're
Give
listening
us
to
a
this,
new phrase.
yeah, you're never going to start with "we need to talk." The best way to start a hard conversation is one of 2 ways. Either start with something positive about the person, like, "You're so important to me," or "You're such a valuable member of this team," or, "Honey, I love you so much," or whatever. Either start with something positive and affirming, or lead with listening. Lead with listening. So
Okay.
let me tell you what I mean by that. So, I had to have a hard conversation, and this is in the book, so there's more information in the book about this story I'm gonna tell you, but I had to have a hard conversation with a friend, and I was like, "Ugh, I hate this, I hate this," but I knew that if I didn't have this conversation, then it would make space for bitterness in my heart, and then that would affect our relationship, or I would find myself intentionally or unintentionally kind of pulling back from this person. And then I knew that's not healthy either. So I thought, okay, the healthy thing to do, the godly thing to do is to actually address this situation. And I thought, oh, how? So I had planned on leading with how it made me feel, what she had done. But instead, it was like the Holy Spirit just whispered to me, stop. And instead, I led with, tell me what happened the other day. Can you tell me the details about what happened? There was a situation. And she explained an entire backstory that I had not been aware of. And I thought, oh, now this all makes so much sense. So if we lead with a question,
Mhm.
like, can you tell me what happened yesterday with that project? Or, what's your perspective on this situation? Like, lead with a question because we already know our perspective on the situation. What we don't know is their perspective. And when we lead with a question, it gives us the full picture. And then we know how to move forward in wisdom with what we say next.
Yes, I love that. And sometimes it dials it back too, where again, it's giving you that perspective where you're
Mhm.
like, whoo, I was about to come in real
Yep.
hot or real
Yep.
messy even. I was about to come
Mhm.
in real messy with how it felt, but I didn't understand from their perspective. Those
Yeah.
are so stinking helpful. I was taking notes here, Donna. So I'll include as much of this as possible, you guys. Make sure to sign up for our email newsletter. Make sure to start downloading Donna's podcast. That's just what I needed. And then also get a hold of the book. I think because we are, especially me in this stage of life, I'm like, I have to teach my children more about this healthy conflict, how to start hard conversations, how to walk through hard conversations, because I get the impression with this age, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you get this a lot, is like, because we can scroll past anything so
Mhm.
fast, like, I don't like that. It doesn't not, move. I feel like sometimes we do that in our relationships. And I'm seeing it in my children where it's like, makes me uncomfortable. Not going to do it. I can just choose something else. I can just check out. I can be dismissive. I can grab my devices. I'm like, whoa, we are going to be consistently in relationship with one another because it
Mhm.
sanctifies us to what God is creating within us, right? So like
Yeah.
we're going to have to figure this out. And so I'm really looking forward to reading the book and diving deep into teaching the kiddos this as well, so that they have some healthy coping mechanisms when they're in relationship with one another. Also, I think, that we can't possibly predict what their marriages are going to be like. I stand firm in that. I've been praying for their roommates and their marriages for years now. They don't see all the things that Nick and I conflict about because I'm like, we're talking about this later. Like we have to get to the event. We have to smile for the picture. We're not talking about this right now, but later we're going to talk about it. But our children don't get to see that end of it always. Like sometimes, yes, they get to see us conflict with one another when we're moving cows for sure. I'm sure they'll be pros on how not to move cows as a married couple when they get to that age. But I want them to have more examples of how to resolve conflict in relationships, whether it's in their marriage or with their children or with their coworkers or with their employees, so that they've just got some tools. And I'm big, obviously, if you've listened to the podcast at all, big on the practical things. So thank you for breaking it down into practical things we can say and do and think. Like lead with listening. It's actually a thinking practical tool, but it will drastically help things. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, it's my heart to be helpful, so I hope it has been.
Oh, yes. And I always end the podcast with saying, how can you encourage our encouragers?
Well, I would encourage everybody listening that if you are listening to this podcast, you are a woman that is wanting to do the right thing. And I think sometimes we just need someone to look at us and say, you're doing a good job.
Oh,
Or we need to
yes.
hear the Lord speak over us like, I'm proud of you. I see that you're trying to do the right thing, and that makes me proud and that pleases me. And none of us will do it perfectly. Only Jesus is perfect, but he does see our efforts. And I just want to encourage everybody listening that if you're trying to do the right thing, God sees you and God's proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Until next time, encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Hey, encouragers, are you tired of juggling home and work life without dropping the ball or your joy? The Encourager cohort is back, and we start September 3rd. This 10-week coaching program is designed for Christian women who want to harmonize home and work with systems that actually stick. We'll meet weekly, walk through the 5 systems, me, food, home, work, and family, and build rhythms that bring peace, not pressure. Join the women who are ready to stop the chaos and start simplified systems. Sign up now at encourageacademy.com.